So we are now into chapter 12. Fortune is going to be my navigator and I'm going to be the driver. And in chapter 12, we'll be dealing with showing validation errors. So when we have an error currently, like when you are trying to create a new user, what is going to happen is that when there's something wrong, maybe the user already exists, or you left an input field blank. When you try to send that information, to send that post request, it's just going to redirect you to that same page, right? So now we want to handle that more gracefully. Also, we want to actually show messages to the user to tell them what went wrong, why it's redirecting to the same page over and over again. So to do that, we're going to firstly we're gonna go to our controllers here, and we're gonna go to store user.js. Now store user.js, we have this this code here, right? This block of code here, and in this code we're going to add this object keys errors line of code here. But then after that, we are going to create it into like a constant variable called validation errors, right? And we're gonna have this object here, and then we're gonna go into the keys method of it. Then we're gonna get these parameters here, errors, and then we're gonna map that each key, right, and show the message, right? And after that, what we are going to do is go to register.ejs. Sorry, I forgot to mention that another thing that we do here is use the flash method. So this is a bit behind, right? You'll see as we go on that instead of using the sessions, we use the flash method here, right, to display those messages and be able to see them, to render them on our template and see them on the browser. So what we do is that we go to, speaking of template, we go to register.ejs, and in register.ejs, we're going to go to new user.js, and in new user.js we're going to create this bit of context here, this parameter here, and it's going to be this request flash validation errors, right? If you remember, validation errors is that constant variable that we have there. And then now in our register.ejs, we are going to have this if statement here, right? So let me just find it. So if errors is not equals to null, so that means if we do have an error, if error is not null, so if we do have an error and the length of that error is greater than 0, we are going to display this, right, which is an unordered list, and it has a for loop inside, which shows us all the errors as list items within this unordered list, right? And that's going to appear above our form, right? And this is what it's going to look like. And if I go to the browser here, let's go to our home page, let's make this larger, let me go to create new user, and I say register without putting anything in. As you can see, it tells me username is required, password is required, right? Instead of just redirecting me back to this page. So now I can create a user here, and a password, and I register, and it's successful, as you can see, right? And then moving on to duplicate entry error. So if you are trying to use a username that already exists, or an entry that's going to be a duplicate, right? Let's say we already have a user 1, and you try to create a user and you put the username as user 1 that already exists in our database. Our app will crash because of that. So what we're going to do is that we're going to use Mongoose validation error, right? We're going to use Mongoose unique validator package, to help us make our error handling easier. So the first thing we do is that we install Mongoose unique validator. As you can see in our package.json, we have Mongoose unique validator here, and then we obviously import it into our index.js. We import it into our project also, and what we do is that we are going to go to user.js also. That's where we also import it, user.js, that's in our models. And as you can see, we import unique validator here, and then after importing unique validator, we are going to use this plugin here, this line of code here, which is the user schema with the plugin, right? And then we pass in unique validator as an argument to that method there. And then now, whenever we try to save a user, the unique validator will check if that user exists in the database, and it will tell us if they do. So just gonna go to back to new user, and I'm just gonna create this user knowing that they exist. I'm gonna say register. You can see error, expected username to be unique. It tells us which input exactly was expected to be unique, right? And then after that, what we're going to be focusing on is flashing error messages from session, right? To do that, we need the connect flash method, right? So this is going back to that flash. This is going back to that flash that we saw earlier. So to do that, we need to install the connect flash method. As you can see, we have it here in our package.json, and then obviously we have to import it to our index.js, and we have it here connect flash. And then after that, we're going to register the middleware with app use, and then we pass in flash as the parameter, as we can see here. And then we go to our store user.js and our controllers, and our store user, we're going to remove that. This is what I said earlier, we don't need that line, we remove it and we put this instead, right? And we pass in validation errors. This variable here, we pass it in as the arguments to that, right? And the name and everything, right? And then after that, we are going to go to our new user.js, which is the controller for creating the new user. And we're going to create this errors context here that we're going to pass in these parameters here, which is request flash with the validation errors. And then after that, we are going to be able to retrieve errors from validation errors key and make them available to this view to be displayed, after which the flash is cleared. So another thing that we can do is customize the error messages. Like if you remember here, error expected username to be unique value. So this is not really user friendly, right? We can make this better, we can customize it, right? So it's very clear to say your username must be unique or something like that. Very straightforward, right? Not technical. But to do that, we have to go to our models, our user model specifically, and in our user model we have to, and this required here, we're going to make it an array, and we're going to make required true, but not just make it true, we're also going to add this here, that username is required, password is required, right? Which is the custom message that we're providing here. We can change it to please provide username, right? Or please provide password, right? Doesn't matter, we can make it whatever we want it to be, just so it's easier for the user to understand what is needed from them to be able to continue, right? And then let me just go back here and let me make this larger, one small. Let's refresh to our home page, go back to our new user, and we pass in nothing, and please provide username. Please, as you can see, we customized that error message right now. After that, what we want to do is to be able to make the request data on form persist. So what that means is that when you fill in something, like when we filled in the user, right? We fill this in. Sorry, let me just clear the errors here. Just refresh this and clear the errors. So when we pass in the user here, right, knowing that they exist and we're trying to create a new user, and we pass in the password, right, what happens is that if this is incorrect, it's going to show you the error, but then this will disappear, it will go away, right? And that's a bit inconvenient really to type that again, you understand? So what you can do is that you can keep that data there, and if someone, maybe they want to make a simple change and add another one, they can do that. So to be able to make that data persist, we are going to go back to our store user.js controller, and in our store user.js controller, we're gonna have this flash here also. The name's gonna be data, and it's just going to be the body of the request. And in that, we are going to go to our new user.js controller also, and in new user.js, we are going to create these. Basically, we're gonna have this line of code here. We're gonna create all these parameters here and their values. So we're gonna create username as a variable. It's gonna be empty, right? We're gonna have password. It's gonna be an empty string also. We're gonna have data, and data is just going to be the flash data in our request, and the first element in that, right? That's going to be stored in this variable called data here, right? And then we're gonna have an if statement, right? And if the type of data is undefined, meaning that there's nothing, we are going to change username from an empty string to what the user has filled in, right? So data.username, right? And yeah, that's what we're going to do. And what that's going to do is going to make the username and the password persist if the registration is unsuccessful. So if you try logging request flash data to the console, you realize that it returns an array, and that's why we get the first element there to be able to verify everything. So this is what it looks like after it's all said and done. We know this user already exists. When I click register, it shows me the error, right? But then whatever I put in is still here, and I can change this and I can make it 21, and then when I register, successful, and it's logged to the console here, as you can see, right? It's supposed to be an array, but it's an empty object right now. And then after that, that's where we're gonna end it with chapter 12. I was the driver, and Fortune was my navigator. Thank you very much. Bye bye.